In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. It's Monday night. It's Untethered Live, and you're on the deep end of everything. I'm your host, Jake Johnson, and I'm coming to you live from the internet. This is the show about something, probably. But tonight, it's definitely about 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 11, because that's where we left off last night, and that's what we're going to pick up on tonight. Doing it right. Doing it like it ought to be. Who's with me? Let's go, Brandon. Yeehaw. I'm feeling particularly well this evening, considering I had a friend pass away this afternoon. Caught me by surprise, or this morning, actually. And wasn't a real close friend or anything, but it was still shocking because I had just jammed out with the guy like a week ago. And he's gone, and that's the way it goes. Yeehaw. Hey, Caucasian Sasquatch. Nice to see you. And all things considered, I feel pretty good today. Got a little bit of my voice back. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I actually could do a little bit of singing this afternoon. Just a little bit, not very much. Didn't want to push it, don't want to stress it, but there it is. It's coming back. Slowly but surely. It's only been a year. It's the longest bout of laryngitis yet. Says the guy who keeps sucking on the cigarettes. Awkward silence. Why? I didn't mean an awkward silence. Anyway. Badly placed yeehaw. Oh, because I was talking about my friend who passed away? Not really. He would have liked it that way. He was a guitar player. Pretty good one, too. And he's gone. Oh, well. He did it to himself. It wasn't like something came and got him. This is what I've heard. I don't know all the details yet, but from what I understand, he checked out on his own. And I have very little sympathy for that. It can't possibly get any worse than it's been for me, and if I don't want to die, you shouldn't. But who knows who's going through what, so that's between him and God. They'll figure it out. Anyway, on to happier things. We're going to get on through this book and see if we can't make it to the end of it tonight. Who knows? We might get closer, if not to the end. If it's as long as the other book was, we might not get to the end of it, but we'll see. It's a great story, though, nonetheless, so far. The writer of this book is a little bit less dramatic than the writer of the last book. A little more in the weeds, a little harder to understand what he's putting down, but we'll get there. I'll figure it out. For whatever reason, you can tell the difference in the writing style almost immediately from one book to the next. Just in the way that they attack details and how they stretch out storylines or jump from one thing to the next. And in this book, I noticed a couple of places so far where they've switched gears mid-sentence, Be talking about one thing, and then all of a sudden you jump 6 months ahead and be talking about something completely different. It's kind of hard to keep up with when you do that, but not all writers are decorated authors. Some of them are just writing down what they know. Some of them weren't even literate, so it's a miracle they even wrote books. also a couple of these books, I don't know if this one in particular, but a couple of these books were written by guys in prison. So you would imagine they could write when they had a chance, remember what they could remember and write it down. I don't know. Prison seemed a lot harder back then than it is now. The likelihood of you making it out of prison alive in those days were about 60-40 to the bad. Probably more than that, but, you know, prison is as prison does. Got me a nice hot cup of coffee. It's 55 degrees outside. It feels like wintertime. Starting about 2 days ago, we started getting gusts of cold air coming in, and I could feel it changing. The leaves fell like rain. And I was like, yeah, well, I guess that's officially wintertime. It's going to get colder from here. Might even snow this year. Who knows? Last year, it didn't seem like it got cold. Maybe it was just me, but I never did get that cold. So it didn't get overly cold in the wintertime. But this year, I suspect it's going to drop down into the teens, right down into the single digits. That's all right, though. I got my trusty space heater in my well-insulated room. I'll be fine. I got a space heater from like the 50s. One big metal thing. Has a big fan in it. It don't get hot, but it'll keep your room warm. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. You can put your hand right on the front of it and it's not hot, but it'll keep a room warm. So warm you want to come out of it. You're expecting a cold winter? Me too. Although it's not going to get that cold in Georgia. You're a lot closer to the equator than I am. And it's not going to get that cold here compared to what North Dakota is going to experience. And I've been to North Dakota, and let me tell you, you've never experienced cold until you go up north. I went up there to play in a band that was on the road, and I was up there for 2 weeks. And we were at this nice little band house. Had 5 guys staying in the house. All of them wearing noise-canceling headphones so they don't disturb each other while they sleep, because there was a bunch of snoring fellers. And so I stepped outside to smoke a cigarette, and I had on 3 layers, all night clothes, though. I had on a robe and a pair of sweatpants and something else under, long johns under that. I went outside, and before my cigarette was finished, I could feel my limbs stiffening up. So I thought, man, I need to get out of here. I put my cigarette out and turned around and grabbed the door, and the sumbitch was locked. I was locked out, and I didn't have a key with me. So naturally, I banged on the door. Nothing. Banged on the window. Nothing. They couldn't hear me. They had noise-canceling headphones on. And so I started thinking, there's a store across the street. Do I think I can make it across there so I can survive? You know, that's how cold it was. I was getting tunnel vision. I couldn't feel my hands. I was trying to pick the lock, and I couldn't hold the thing steady to pick the lock with. So my decision was to kick the door in and fix it in the morning. So that's what I did. I slammed the door and busted it off the frame and got in. But that was precarious, man. That 7 minutes of my life, I thought I could possibly freeze to death. And we're talking cold. I ain't never been so cold in my life. So fast. I mean, like it was to the bone in a matter of minutes. You're thinking your winter will be wet. It could be. Might be a lot of rain. Might be some snow. Who knows? So much for global warming, though. Anyway, that little excursion, that cigarette cost me about $100. I had to fix that door before we left. So, hard pass, yeah. I don't think I want to do it on purpose either anymore, but you'd have to pay me to go up there. I wouldn't go up there on my own, I can tell you that. I'd go, but there'd have to be money involved. That was about 2 weeks before my mama died. I took that trip. I debated hard on going, and my mama said, you need to go because this isn't an opportunity you get all the time. So I went, and I was able to make it home 2 weeks before she passed away. So I got to spend the last 2 weeks with her, and that was good. If I move, it's going to be south. Smart move. Me too. If I move, I'm going to Florida. Florida seems to be the only sane place left in America, and it's going fast, so who knows? Well, Mississippi is not south of Georgia. It's west of Georgia, but I get your point. You could go a little south. If you went into, like, New Orleans, down in Louisiana, you could go south. I think Mississippi is right beside Georgia, isn't it? There's Alabama and Mississippi kind of right beside each other. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been over there. The coast is south of you. Does Mississippi have a coast? I don't think it does. I'm trying to picture it. That's how long it's been since I've looked at a map. I have to remember what the states look like. Yeah, you might be right. I'll have to look at a map because I don't know. I know there's a river that goes through Mississippi, a pretty big one, but I don't think it touches the ocean. I think it's landlocked. I could be wrong, though. But then again, I didn't know Alabama had a beach either, but it does. But I don't know if it's the ocean or if it's just a inlet. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the area. I did live in the Panhandle for a little while, but very little while, and I was very young. I know that if you're in Florida, though, it don't matter which direction you go, you're going to run into water. And you don't have to go very far for that. I think the whole state's like 80 miles across or something. Maybe 100. I'm liking the armpit of Florida. Well, you're talking Pensacola now. Yeah. That's a good place to live. I've got some property pretty close to that area. But it's very expensive to live there. That's why I don't live there. Or at least it was. I don't know how it is now. It's been about 15, 20 years since I've been there. But when I lived there, it was very expensive. You had to pump in everything. Can't even get TV without some kind of cable, Gallon of milk cost $5 back then. We live on an estate. Our property is on an estate called Three Rivers Estate. It's like a gated community without the gate. Hey, Diego, what's happening, my brother? Waiting on Kevin and April. Get this party started. See who else is going to show up. Had a couple of new people last time. Wonder if they'll come back. Anyway, that area where my property's at is where they used to film the old Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan shows. In that area. Fort White Springs. The Itchytutney River. And it doubled as the Amazon. Hey, there's Kevin Cox. What do you want for it? Oh, you'd have to talk to my sister. I think 10 grand will get it, though. I gave it to her because I've already got a piece of property here to deal with, so I gave that piece to her. So she'll either sell it or keep it, but talk to her and see what she says. But I'm pretty sure 10 grand will get it. It don't have a house on it anymore. The strippers have done got to it. Stripped it out, all the copper and stuff. So you'd have to put a trailer out there, but spend about a month cleaning up the property because it's all grown up now. But it's a nice big piece of property back in the woods, real far back. And not a lot of neighbors. There's a couple more now than there used to be because some more people have bought properties in that area. But it ain't very sparse. I mean, it is very sparse. There's not very many neighbors. And right across the street, over a hill, is the Itchitucknee River. I'm looking for a place nowhere. Well, this is it. It's nowhere, about as nowhere as you can be. And it has a bomb shelter built on the property. You'd have to dig it out because it's full of sand now because of the weather, and put a roof on it. But it's there. The walls and the floor are there. And it is strategically located between the 3 major military bases of the world. So if nuclear weapons ever get launched, they will most likely hit one of those bases, and you are right in the middle of the blast zone in a way that would protect you from fallout. So it's a good location. That's why we picked it. That's why we bought it. Because at one time we thought we might be heading in that direction. That was back when the nuclear scare was going on. So it is a good place to have, and it's far enough off the beaten path. Ain't nobody going to find you quickly and easily. You have to know how to get there to get there. It is on a map, but unless you're looking for it, you won't see it. It's got a lot of cover. Yes, Diego, we're getting there, buddy. Some more scripture reading shortly. Just waiting for the crew to show up. Anyway, talk to my sister, and I'm sure she'll let you get it. I'll mention it to her next time I see her. Where's April at today, Kevin? April is under the weather and sleeping. Oh, no. She ain't got the COVID, does she? What's up? Well, tell her we're all thinking about her. Let's go down here. No to the COVID. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. All right, if you got your Bibles handy, break out 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 11. That's where we're going to start. Oh, get comfortable here. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing, and he called his servants, and said unto them, Will ye not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, None, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet that is in Israel telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. Let's imagine that. Can't have no privacy. Got some prophet out there knowing every word I say. And he said, Go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. That's in Alabama, for those of you keeping up. Therefore sent he thither horses and chariots and a great host, and they came by night and compassed the city about. They surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, an host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. I mean, they were looking to get this fella. And he was like, Wow, all this for little old me? And his servant said unto him, Alas, my master, how shall we do? What should we do? Where should we go? And he answered, Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. Now he's talking about angels here. He knows he's protected. He knows God's on his side. So he tells his servant, don't worry about it. There might be a few of them, but there's more of us. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire about Elisha. So his servant got to see how many angels were surrounding that army that was surrounding him. Many. And when they came down to him, Elijah prayed unto the Lord and said, Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness according to the words of Elisha. And Elisha said unto them, This is not the way. Apparently he's a Mandalorian. Neither is this city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria, and it came to pass, when they were come to Samaria, that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. And the king of Israel said unto Elisha, when he saw them, My father, shall I smite them? Shall I smite them? And he answered, Thou shalt not smite them. Wouldest thou smite those whom thou hast taken captive with the sword, with the bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink, and go to their master. And he prepared great provisions for them. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syria came no more into the land of Israel. Well, that's one way to fix it. Capture them all, and then let them all go. Oh, well. And it came to pass after this, that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his host, and went up and besieged Samaria. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it, until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the 4th part of a cab of doves' dung for 5 pieces of silver. I don't know what you're going to do with dove's dung, but I'm not eating it. But apparently it was pretty bad. They were eating whatever they could get their hands on. And as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord do not help thee, whence shall I help thee? If God ain't helping you, what is it you expect me to do? Out of the barn floor, or out of the winepress? And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, This woman said unto me, Give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. These people have gone crazy. So we boiled my son and did eat him. And I said unto her on the next day, Give thy son, that we may eat him. And she hath hid her son. You think? That woman just tricked you with the oldest trick in the book. Well, you go first. And it came to pass, when the king heard the words of the woman, that he rent his clothes, and he passed by upon the wall, and the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. Yeah, he was mourning all right, but what can you do? The people are eating each other. Then he said, God do so, and more also to me, if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, shall stand on him this day. But Elisha sat in his house, and the elders sat with him, and the king sent a man from before him, but ere the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, See ye how this son of a murderer hath sent to take away mine head? Look, when the messenger cometh, shut the door, and hold him fast at the door. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him? And while he yet talked with them, behold, the messenger came down unto him, and he said, Behold, this evil is of the Lord. What should I wait for the Lord any longer? Well, this evil is not of the Lord. This evil is of bad people living in a famine-ridden area. Has nothing to do with God. But if you want to blame him for it, I see your point. Then Elisha said, Hear ye the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, Tomorrow about this time shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, in the gate of Samaria. Then a Lord, lowercase l, on whose hand the king leaned, answered the man of God, and said, Behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, might this thing be? And he said, Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but thou shalt not eat thereof. You'll see it, but you're not going to get any of it. So, you're out of luck. And there were 4 leprous men at the entering in of the gate, and they said to one another, Why sit we here until we die? If we say we will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. And if we sit here, we die also. Now therefore come, and let us fall unto the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall but die. Well, I guess if you're going to die, die fighting. And they rose up in the twilight to go unto the camp of the Syrians. And when they were come to the uttermost part of the camp of Syria, behold, there was no man there. They were all gone. For the Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And they said to one another, Lo, the king of Israel hath hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. It's all in their head. They didn't actually see anything. They just heard noises, and it scared them all, and they left. Wherefore they arose and fled in the twilight, and left their tents, and their horses, and their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life, just because they heard some ruckus. And when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp, when they went into one tent, and did eat and drink, and carried thence silver and gold and raiment, and went and hid it, and came again, and entered into another tent, and carried thence also, and went and hid it. So they made out like bandits, these 2 lepers. They got food, and they got rich. Smart move. Then they said to one another, We do not well. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. If we tarry till the morning light, some mischief will come upon us. Now therefore come, that we may go and tell the king's household. So they came and called unto the porter of the city, and they told them, saying, We came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no man there, neither voice of a man, but the horses tied, and the asses tied, and the tents as they were. And he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house within. And the king arose in the night, and said unto his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we be hungry, therefore they are gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, When they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive, and get into the city. And one of his servants answered and said, Let some take, I pray thee, 5 of the horses that remain, which are left in the city. Behold, they are as all the multitude of Israel, that they are left in it. Behold, I say, there are even as all the multitude of the Israelites that are consumed, and let us send and see. So in other words, they've just about eaten all the horses. Let us take 5 of the ones that are left and go check it out. It's a roundabout way of saying that. They took, therefore, 2 chariot horses. The king sent after the host of the Syrians, saying, Go and see. So in other words, he sent them to go check out this empty camp. see if there's people hiding in the fields round about. And they went after them unto Jordan, and lo, all the way was full of garments and vessels which the Syrians had cast away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. And the people went out and spoiled the tents of the Syrians. So a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. And the king appointed the Lord, lowercase l, on whose hand he leaned to have the charge of the gate. I guess that's like the king's hand, meaning the second in command. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by whose hand he leaned, but I'm assuming that's what that means. And the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died. As the man of God had said, who spake when the king came down to him. In other words, the king did not make it out of that little tussle alive. And it came to pass, as the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, a measure of fine flour for a shekel, shall be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. And that the Lord answered the man of God and said, Now, behold, if the Lord should make windows in heaven, might such a thing be? And he said, Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but thou shalt not eat thereof. And so it fell out unto him. For the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died. So he saw it, but he never got to partake of any of it. He's dead. Then spake Elijah unto the woman, whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise, and go thou and thine household, and sojourn wheresoever thou canst sojourn. In other words, get out of here. For the Lord hath called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years. You won't survive that, so go find somewhere else to be, you and your son. Remember the woman from last night's story where he brought the kid back to life? That's who he's talking to. And the woman arose and did after the saying of the man of God. And she went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. And it came to pass at the 7 years' end that the woman returned out of the land of the Philistines, and she went forth to cry unto the king for her house and for her land. And the king talked with Gehazi, that's Elisha's servant, the servant of the man of God, saying, Tell me, I pray thee, all the great things that Elisha hath done. And it came to pass, as he was telling the king how he had restored the dead body to life, that, behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life cried to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elijah restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed her a captain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field since the day that she left the land, even until now. That's pretty generous. And Elijah came to Damascus, and Benhadad, king of Syria, was sick, and it was told him, saying, The man of God is come hither. And the king said unto Hazael, Take a present to thine hand, and go meet the man of God, and inquire of the Lord by him, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? So Hazael went to meet him, and took a present with him, even of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camels' burden. So, in other words, he loaded up 40 camels with stuff to take to Elisha. And came and stood before him, and said, Thy son Benhadad, king of Syria, hath sent me to thee, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? And Elisha said unto him, Go, say unto him, Thou mayest certainly recover. Howbeit, the Lord hath showed me that he shall surely die. You'll get over this sickness, but you're not long for this world. And he settled his countenance steadfastly until he was ashamed. And the man of God wept. And Hazael said, Why weepest, my lord? And he answered, Because I know the evil that thou wilt do unto the children of Israel. Their strongholds wilt thou set on fire, and their young men wilt thou slay with a sword, and wilt dash their children, and rip up their women with child. Oof, that's rough. And Hazael said, But what? Is thy servant a dog, that he should do this great thing? And Elisha answered, The Lord hath showed me that thou shalt be king over Syria. He's talking to the servant, telling the servant he's going to be the king. So he departed from Elisha and came to his master, whom said to him, What said Elisha to thee? And he answered, He told me that thou shalt surely recover, period. You missing something there? Didn't quite tell him everything, did he? Didn't tell him the part about him becoming king, or that this guy was about to die, or that they were going to destroy Israel. You're going to recover. You're fine. And it came to pass on the morrow that he took a thick cloth and dipped it in water and spread it on his face, so that he died. And Hazael reigned in his stead. He suffocated himself. Or did Hazael suffocate him? And it came to pass on the morrow that he took a thick cloth and dipped it in water and spread it on his face, so that he died. And Hazael reigned in his stead. I guess he did it to himself. And in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being then king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, began to reign. 32 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as did the house of Ahab. For the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for David his servant's sake, as he promised him to give him always a light, and to his children. In his days Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah, and made a king over themselves. They appointed their own king. They're not having any of this Jehoram or Jehoshaphat business. You see, a lot of people like to blame God for things that go bad in the world, but God could have destroyed Israel at any time, and he chose not to because he promised David he wouldn't do it. He promised David that he would always have a light unto his children, that there would always be a way for them to rule over Israel. So you could say that God allowing these bad things to happen was him keeping his promise to David, because he could have nipped it in the bud at any time, but he didn't, because he promised David he wouldn't. So Joram went over to Zair, and all the chariots with him, and he rose by night and smote the Edomites which compassed about him, and the captains of the chariots, and the people fled into their tents. Yet Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah unto this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time. Jehu is coming. Where's he coming from? Lots of kings, yes. Yet Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah unto this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time. And the rest of the acts of Joram, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Joram slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Ahaziah, his son, reigned in his stead. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, did Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, begin to reign. 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Athaliah. the daughter of Omri, king of Israel. Omri, king of Israel. Not Omri, Omri. That's a weird word. And he walked in the ways of the house of Ahab and did evil in the sight of the Lord. That's 4 kings in that did evil, by the way, those you keeping count. That's a lot of evil before good starts happening. As did the house of Ahab. For he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. In other words, he married into the family, but he found his way to the throne anyway. And he went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to the war against Hazael, king of Syria, and Ramoth-Gilead. And the Syrians wounded Joram. And King Joram went back to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him at Ramah, when he fought against them. When he fought against Hazael, king of Syria. And Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel, because he was sick. And Elijah the prophet called one of the children of the prophets, and said unto him, Gird up thy loins, and take this box of oil in thine hand, and go to Ramoth-Gilead. And when thou comest thither, look out there Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in, and make him arise up from among his brethren, and carry him to an inner chamber. Then take the box of oil, and pour it on his head, and say, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then open the door, and flee, and tarry not. So, sneak attack, king him, run in, pour some oil on his head, and haul butt. Tell him he's king, and get out of there. See what happens. His ego will just start blowing up. So the young man, even the young man the prophet, went to Ramoth-Gilead, and when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting, and he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. And Jehu said, Unto which of all of us? And he said, To thee, O captain. And he arose and went into the house, and he poured the oil on his head, and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel. And thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel. He's just a son. It doesn't say who he is. He's just one of the prophet's kids. There's several prophets, right? Several of them have been slain already, and that's what he's talking about as far as avenging the blood of the prophets. Some of them have already been killed, and he's one of their sons. It doesn't really matter who he is. It was Elisha that sent him in his stead to anoint the guy king. So either way, the word came from Elisha. I hope that helps. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel, and I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel in the portion of Jezreel, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door and fled. That's a hell of a thing to tell somebody and then run. Then Jehu came forth to the servants of his Lord, and one said unto him, Is all well? Yeah, I think so. That guy just poured some oil on my head and told me some weird stuff and ran. But yeah, I think I'm all right. Wherefore came this mad fellow to thee? And he said unto them, Ye know the man and his communication. And they said, It is false. Tell us now. And he said, Thus and thus spake he to me, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then they hasted, and took every man his garment, and put it under him on top of the stairs, and blew with trumpets, saying, Jehu is king. Well, they believed it. I guess it wasn't false. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram, Now Joram had kept Ramoth Gilead, he and all Israel, because of Hazael the king of Israel. But King Joram was returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him, when he fought with Hazael king of Syria. And Jehu said, If it be your minds, then let none go forth, nor escape out of the city to go to tell it in Jezreel. So Jehu rode in a chariot and went to Jezreel, for Joram lay there. And Ahaziah, king of Judah, was come down to see Joram. And there stood a watchman on the tower in Jezreel. And he spied the company of Jehu as he came, and said, I see a company. And Joram said, Take an horseman, and send to meet them, and let him say, Is it peace? In other words, find out what they've come here for, and find out if they're here peacefully. So there went one on horseback to meet him, and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Jehu said, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, The messenger came to them, but he cometh not again. Then he sent out a second on horseback, which came to them, and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Jehu answered, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, He came even unto them, and cometh not again. And the driver is like the driving of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he driveth furiously. And Joram said, Make ready. And his chariot was made ready, and Joram king of Israel and Ahaziah king of Judah went out, each in his chariot. And they went out against Jehu, and met him in the portion of Naboth, in the portion of Naboth the Jezreelite, I guess on his property. And it came to pass, when Joram saw Jehu, that he said, Is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, What peace? So long as the whoredoms of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many. And Joram turned his hands and fled, and said to Ahaziah, There is treachery, O Ahaziah. Oh yeah, you about to get it, buddy. And Jehu drew a bow with his full strength, and smote Jehoram between his arms, and the arrow went out at his heart, and he sunk down in his chariot and died. Then said Jehu to Bidkar, his captain, Take up, and cast him in the portion of the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. For remember how that, when I and thou rode together after Ahab his father, the Lord laid this burden upon him. Surely I have seen yesterday the blood of Naboth, and the blood of his sons, saith the Lord. And I will requite thee in this plat, saith the Lord. Now, therefore, take and cast him into the plot of ground, according to the word of the Lord. But when Ahaziah the king of Judah saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house. And Jehu followed after him, and said, Smite him also in the chariot. And they did so at the going up of Gur, which is by Ibleam. Ibleam? What's an Ibleam? This thing holds building up. Okay. And he fled to Megiddo and died there. Megiddo, that's a place you need to remember. We're going to come back to that place a few times. And things are going to end there for this world, so you might better want to pay attention to what happens in Megiddo. And his servants carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem, and buried him in a sepulchre with his fathers in the city of David. And in the 11th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, began Ahaziah to reign over Judah. And when Jehu was come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her face and tired her head. Could you imagine her with a big old tire on her head? I wonder if it was vulcanized. And looked out at a window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, Had Zimri peace? Who slew his master? He lifted up his face to the window and said, Who is on my side? Who? And there looked out to him 2 or 3 eunuchs. What a eunuch is a person whose balls have been cut off so that they can work in the harems without getting excited. Time to get rid of that filthy, evil woman, Jezebel. Yep. And he said, Throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses. And he trode her underfoot. He rode his horse right over top of her. And when he was come in, he did eat and drink, and said, Go, see now this cursed woman, and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. And they went to bury her, but they found no more than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands. Apparently, something's done eat her up. Wherefore they came again and told him, and he said, This is the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servants Elijah the Tishbite, saying, In the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the carcass of Jezebel shall be as dung upon the face of the field in the portion of Jezreel. So they shall not say, This is Jezebel. In other words, she's not going to be buried. And that's what Elisha said. I don't know if Elijah said it, but Elisha said it, that the dogs would eat her flesh and that there would be nothing left of her to bury. And that's exactly what came to pass so many months later. And Ahab said, 70 sons in Samaria. And Jehu wrote letters and sent to Samaria unto the rulers of Jezreel, to the elders, and to them that brought up Ahab's children, saying, Now, as soon as this letter cometh to you, seeing your master's sons are with you, and there are with you chariots and horses, a fenced city also, and armor. Look even out the best and the meetest of your master's sons. That means the most fit, or the most willing to help out. Meet means to help. It's a help meet. So the meetest means whoever the most fittest is. And set him on his father's throne, and fight for your master's house. But they were exceedingly afraid, and said, Behold, 2 kings stood not before him. How then shall we stand? And he that was over the house, and he that was over the city, the elders also, and the bringers up of the children, sent to Jehu, saying, We are thy servants, and will do all that thou hast bid us. We will not make any king. Do thou that which is good in thine eyes. In other words, you're the king. We don't want no more of this stuff. We don't want to be part of the ruling class. You do the ruling, and we'll do the following, and we're all happy. Then he wrote a letter the second time to them, saying, If ye be mine, and if ye will hearken unto my voice, take ye the heads of the men of your master's sons, and come to me to Jezreel by tomorrow. This time. In other words, I guess kill all the sons. If you don't want to make one of them king, kill them all, because they're just going to cause problems. Now the king's sons being 70 persons, 70 sons, were with the great men of the city which brought them up. And it came to pass, when the letter came to them, that they took the king's sons and slew 70 persons, and put their heads in baskets, and sent them to Jezreel. And there came a messenger and told him, saying, They have brought the heads of the king's sons. And he said, Lay ye them in 2 heaps at the entering in of the gate until morning. And it came to pass in the morning that he went out, and stood and said to all the people, Ye be righteous. Behold, I conspired against my master and slew him. But who slew all these? Know now that there shall fall unto the earth nothing of the word of the Lord, which the Lord spake concerning the house of Ahab. For the Lord hath done that which he spake by his servant Elijah. So Jehu slew all that remained of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, and all his great men, and his kinfolks, and his priests, until he left him none remaining. And he arose and departed and came to Samaria. And as he was at the shearing house in the way, Jehu met with the brethren of Ahaziah king of Judah, and said, Who are ye? And they answered, We are the brethren of Ahaziah, and we go down to salute the children of the king and the children of the queen. And he said, Take them alive. And they took them alive, and slew them at the pit of the shearing house, even 42 men. Neither left he any of them. Jehu is cleaning house. He is getting rid of all who might even come close to being someone who could ascend to the throne. He's killing them all. There are no high men left except him, of all of his enemies. And when he was departed thence, he lighted on Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, coming to meet him. And he saluted him and said to him, Is thine heart right, as my heart is with thy heart? And Jehonadab answered, It is. If it be, give me thine hand. And he gave him his hand, and he took him up to him in the chariot, pulled him right up in his chariot with him. And he said, Come with me, and see my zeal for the Lord. So they made him ride in his chariot. Yes, the Lord knew these people were irredeemable. 4 kings have reigned several years, all doing evil in the sight of the Lord. They're not getting any better. That's why he made Jehu king, to start over. And to start over, you need to wipe away the old. And that's what they did. They killed everybody that was even involved with the house. Anybody, even a captain. If there was anybody in any leadership role that could ascend to the throne, that person got killed. He cleaned house. He left nothing but peasants. And then started over with the zeal of the Lord, and see if we can't right this ship back to the right way of living. Which obviously means no more whoredom, no more worshiping false gods, no more building altars in high places to do sacrifices to things that aren't God, that sort of thing. That's what all these other 4 kings did. All did evil, and they caused Israel to sin, and that's the problem. You understand? It's not God's doing, it's man's doing. God is just setting it right by telling Elijah how to set people in the right places so that they can take over. It's kind of like Game of Thrones that way. There's a lot of positioning, a lot of moving pieces on the board, as it were. And when he came to Samaria, he slew all that remained unto Ahab in Samaria, till he had destroyed him, according to the saying of the Lord, which he spake to Elijah. Again, I think they're doing wrong here. I think that's Elisha, not Elijah. I don't know for sure. Maybe he told Elijah, and then Elijah's spirit went on to Elisha, and then Elisha carried it out. I'm not exactly sure, but they keep using the name Elijah here, and they're clearly talking about Elisha. And Jehu gathered all the people together and said unto them, Ahab served Baal a little, and Jehu shall serve him much. Now therefore call unto me all the prophets of Baal, all his servants and all his priests, let none be wanting. For I have a great sacrifice to do to Baal. Whosoever shall be wanting, he shall not live. But Jehu did it in subtlety, to the intent that he might destroy the worshippers of Baal. Now you see, he's playing a little trick here. Because the last 4 kings were Baal worshippers, he says to the people, bring everybody that worships Baal. Bring them all. Because I've got a great sacrifice to do to Baal, and they all need to be there. It's a little play. He has no intentions of worshiping Baal. What he's trying to do is get all those people in one place so he can kill them all and get rid of Baal worship in the land. And Jehu said, proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal, and they proclaimed it. And Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left that came not. They all were there. And they came into the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was full from one end to the other. And he said unto him that was over the vestry, bring forth vestments for all the worshippers of Baal. And he brought them forth vestments, that's clothing, like cloaks. And Jehu went, and Jehonadab the son of Rechab, into the house of Baal, and said unto the worshippers of Baal, search and look, that there be here with you none of the servants of the Lord, but the worshippers of Baal only. Make damn sure there's nobody here that believes in God. I want only people that worship Baal in this room. Why do you reckon that is? Do I feel fire in the short future? Let's find out. And when they went to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings, Jehu appointed 80 men without, and said, if any of the men whom I have brought into your hands escape, he that letteth him go, his life shall be for the life of him. So don't let anybody leave this room. If anybody escapes, I'm killing you. So you guard that door with your life and don't let anybody out. And it came to pass, as soon as he made an end of offering the burnt offering, that Jehu said to the guard and to the captains, go in and slay them, let none come forth. And they smote them with the edge of the sword, and the guard of the captains cast them out, and went to the city of the house of Baal. And they brought forth the images out of the house of Baal and burned them. There's that fire. I thought they were going to burn everybody in the house, but they're just burning the images. And they break down the image of Baal and break down the house of Baal and made it a draught house unto this day. I don't know what a draught house is, but it's not a house of worship, and that's the point. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel. Howbeit, from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, Jehu departed not from after them, to wit, the golden calves that were in Bethel and that were in Dan. And the Lord said unto Jehu, because thou hast done well in executing that which is right in mine eyes, and hast done unto the house of Ahab according to all that was in my heart, thy children of the 4th generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. So 4 generations of Jehu's children will be king. But Jehu took no heed to walk in the law of the Lord God of Israel with all his heart, for he departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, which made Israel to sin. So even he didn't do everything right. Even he managed to keep the ways of Jeroboam. He didn't tear down those golden calves, and he should have. In those days the Lord began to cut Israel short, and Hazael smote them in all the coasts of Israel, from Jordan eastward, all the land of Gilead, and the Gadites, and the Reubenites, and the Manassites, from Aroer, which is by the river Arnon, even Gilead and Bashan. Now the rest of the acts of Jehu, and all that he did, and all his might, are they not written in the book of the chronicle of the kings of Israel? And Jehu slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. And Jehoahaz, his son, reigned in his stead. And at the time that Jehu reigned over Israel and Samaria was 28 years. And when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the seed royal. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him from among the king's sons which were slain. And they hid him, even him and his nurse, in the bedchamber from Athaliah. Athaliah, I said that right. So that he was not slain. So she was going about killing all of the royal seed so that nobody could precede him. But they hid one away. And he was with her, hid in the house of the Lord 6 years. And Athaliah did reign over the land. That's a female king, by the way, a queen, as it were. So for all you sexist patriarchy people out there saying that the Bible is down on women, there's a woman queen running the land for 6 years. So, nah. You're wrong. And the 7th year, Jehoiada sent and fetched the rulers over hundreds with the captains of the guard, and brought them to him into the house of the Lord, and made a covenant with them, and took an oath of them in the house of the Lord, and showed them the king's son. And he commanded them, saying, This is the thing that ye shall do. A third part of you that enter in on the Sabbath shall even be keepers of the watch of the king's house. And a third part shall be at the gate of Sur, and a third part at the gate behind the guard. So shall ye keep the watch of the house, that it be not broken down. In other words, make sure this boy don't get found out. One of you at the gates, one of you behind the gates, and one of you at the house. Don't let nobody come tear this house down and find this boy. And two parts of all of you that go forth on the Sabbath, even they shall keep the watch of the house of the Lord about the king. And ye shall compass the king round about, every man with his weapon in hand. And he that cometh in within the range, let him be slain. Don't let anybody even come near this house. And be ye with the king as he goeth out, and as he cometh in. And the captains over the hundreds did according to all that Jehoiada the priest commanded. And they took him, every man his men that were to come in on the Sabbath, with them that should go out on the Sabbath, and came to Jehoiada the priest. So in other words, they stayed round the clock. There were some there and some gone, some on, some off, and they would switch places. But always they kept guard over this little boy and the house that he was in, and then even the city that the house was in. And to the captains over hundreds did the priest give King David spears and shields that were in the temple of the Lord. And the guard stood, every man with his weapon in hand, round about the king, from the right corner of the temple to the left corner of the temple, along by the altar and the temple. So it was guarded pretty well. And he brought forth the king's son, and put the crown upon him, and gave him the testimony. In other words, they coronated him. And they made him king, and anointed him. And they clapped their hands and said, God save the king. Might be the first time that's ever been said. Apparently we're in England now. And when Athaliah heard the noise of the guards and of the people, she came to the people into the temple of the Lord. And when she looked, behold, the king stood by a pillar, as the manner was, and the princes and the trumpeters by the king. And all the people of the land rejoiced and blew with trumpets. And Athaliah rent her clothes and cried, Treason! Treason! Yeah, the difference is Game of Thrones is fantasy, I know. I'm just drawing a comparison. You understand that the Game of Thrones was inspired by some of the things that happened in the Bible. A lot of those authors, the guy that wrote Lord of the Rings, the guy that wrote all of these different, the guy that wrote Star Wars, all drew from what was going on in the Bible. That's their inspiration. That's where they get the idea of the hero's journey. It comes from the Bible. There are no books before it. But Jehoiada the priest commanded the captains of the hundreds and the officers of the host, and said unto them, Have her forth, without the ranges, and him that followeth her kill with the sword. For the priest had said, Let her not be slain in the house of the Lord. And they laid hands on her, and she went by the way, by the which the horses came in to the king's house, and there was she slain. And Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king of the people, that they should be the Lord's people, Lo-Ami, Miami. There's that word again. Between the king also and the people. And all the people of the land went into the house of Baal and broke it down. His altars, his image brake they in pieces thoroughly, and slew Mattan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. And the priest appointed officers over the house of the Lord. And he took the rulers over hundreds, and the captains, and the guard, and all the people of the land. And they brought down the king from the house of the Lord, and came by the way of the gate of the guards to the king's house. And he sat on the throne of the kings. And all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was in quiet. And they slew Athaliah with the sword beside the king's house. 7 years old was Jehoash when he began to reign. 7 years old. And in the 7th year of Jehu, Jehoash began to reign. And 40 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Zebiah of Beersheba. And Jehoash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him. So every day she was there to instruct him, he did right in the sight of God, which is a nice change, because 5 kings have done wrong in the sight of God. Jehu was better than the other 4, but he still sinned, and he still caused Israel to sin. But Jehoash did not. But the high places were not taken away. Still. And the people still sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places. And Jehoash said to the priests, All the money of the dedicated things that is brought into the house of the Lord, even the money of every one that passeth the account, the money that every man is set at, and all the money that cometh into any man's heart to bring into the house of the Lord, let the priests take it to them, every man of his acquaintance, and let them repair the breaches of the house, wheresoever any breach shall be found. In other words, clean this place up. Donald Trump was kind of Jehu. I think he was more like the king of Samaria, Cyrus. Well, please do. Talk all you wish, buddy. Let's do it. But it was so that in the 23 year, the king Jehoash the priest had not repaired the breaches of the house. Oh, well. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest and the other priests, and said unto them, Why repair ye not the breaches of the house? Didn't I tell you to fix this place up? What's going on? Where's all the money going? Now, therefore, receive no more money of your acquaintance, but deliver it for the breaches of the house. And the priest consented to receive no more money of the people, neither to repair the breaches of the house. But Jehoiada the priest took a chest, and bore a hole in the lid of it, and set it beside the altar on the right side, as one cometh into the house of the Lord. And the priest that kept the door put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. They made an offering plate, first one of its kind. It's a chest with a hole in it. When you come in, drop your offering in and move along. You see, from the very beginnings, offerings have been part of the deal. For the house of the Lord, or the podcast of the Lord, if you will, cannot stand lest it is funded, because it takes all the effort of the people that run it to run it. They don't have time to go out and make a living. They're busy teaching you the Word of God. It's up to you to help them do that. It is the first public access television, basically. You pay for it, they provide it. And it was so, when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put up in bags and told the money that was found in the house of the Lord. So they counted it all, and then they stored it, kind of like a bank system. And they gave the money, being told, into the hands of them that did the work and the oversight of the house of the Lord, and they laid it out to the carpenters and builders that wrought upon the house of the Lord, and to the masons and the hewers of stone, and to buy timber and hewed stone to repair the breaches of the house of the Lord, for all that was laid out for the house to repair it. So this is the first king that is not corrupted. He took the money they gave him and he put it towards the house of the Lord. All of it. Keeping none for himself. This is important. Those people that run the house of the Lord must make a living, yes, but it's to keep the house of the Lord. That's why you give the money, so that they can keep the house of the Lord and reach more people and grow. You can't do it any other way. That's the only way to do it. But so many times you get people like the Kenneth Copelands of the world, and they get out there and they get a little taste of that money, and then they start wearing Rolex watches, and they start flying in G5 jets, and next thing you know, they're corrupted. Money can corrupt you. It shouldn't, though. It should go to the house of the Lord. That's why it's there. It's there as a parsonage. It's there to keep the priest fed and the lights cut on, and it's there to keep up the appearance of the house of the Lord. All things that are built by man eventually fall. Therefore, it needs to be continually repaired and continually cleaned and continually kept up. That's why all these masons and stone hewers and builders are all there, to keep the house sturdy and presentable. Howbeit, they were not made for the house of the Lord bowls of silver, snuffers, basins, trumpets, or any vessels of gold, or vessels of silver of the money that was brought into the house of the Lord, but they gave that to the workmen and repaired therewith the house of the Lord. They weren't trying to show off. They weren't trying to get richer and have rich things. They just wanted to fix up the house of the Lord, so they paid for it. Moreover, they reckoned not with the men. Into those hands they delivered the money to be bestowed on the workmen, for they dealt faithfully. The trespass money and sin money was not brought into the house of the Lord. It was the priest's. That's the money the priest lives on. Then Hazael, king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath and took it. And Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. And that's where we're going to stop for today, ladies and gentlemen. What a fascinating story that was. Well and true, and a good lesson about how to keep the temple at the end there. And I want to leave you thinking about that. It is of great importance. I hope you learned a lot from this lesson, and I hope you enjoyed it. Won't you please do me a favor? Speaking of which, hit that subscribe button. Press the bell icon so you get notifications of when I'm going to be here. Smash that like button and smash it hard, but smash it only once. Share this video with somebody you love. Better yet, share it with somebody you don't love. Bring them into the fold. Make them part of the family. Be part of their solutions, not part of their problems. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you're thinking about. Question me, curse me, bless me, challenge me, confront me, conform with me. Drink my Kool-Aid. Drink your own Kool-Aid. As long as you're thinking critically, that's what I want. Critical thought coming from that brain of yours. And if you love what I'm doing and you love the Word of God and you'd like to see it grow and you'd like to be part of something special, or if you have love offerings or tithes or whatever, take a moment, please, and go to paypal.me/JakeJohnsonBand. Every little bit helps. It's a win-win. It's a blessing for me. It's a blessing for you, too. God notices these things, and you better know that He does. And with that, I will take your questions and comments, rounding out this video. Hey, what'd you think? How'd you like that story? Did you learn anything? Did it tingle your tickles? Did it make you feel like you were inadequate? Did it challenge you? Did it make you feel good? Tell me about it. Tell me what you think. That's a good cup of coffee. All right, Diego, you said you wanted to talk more about Jehu and Jehoash, so go right ahead, buddy. Let's hear it. I will do my best to endeavor to answer your questions. Did I lose anybody? Who's with me? Oh, you're all here. No, I do not remember Jonathan Kahn. I don't know who that is. What about him? I don't know the name. Can't place it. Yes, Jehu was a king that God anointed to clear the house of Israel, and so he did. He just happened to keep doing the same thing that Jeroboam was doing. And Ahab's evil legacy ended, but Jehu's did not, which is why Jehoash was put in place. See, it's in steps of increments. They went from being evil to being bad to being good again. There's a difference between evil and bad. Not much of a difference, but there is a difference. And Jehu, even though he did right by the eyes of God, and God rewarded him by saying 4 generations of his children would run Israel, and so they did. However, he still walked in the ways of Jeroboam. He still sent people to those false calves, those fake gods, and burnt offerings to them, and caused Israel to sin. That's still a bad thing. He never managed to stop doing that. He did manage to kill all the Baal worshippers, though, so that's a good thing. God rewarded him for that. So it's good and bad. But Jehoash, as long as that priest, forget her name now, but as long as she instructed him, he walked right in the eyes of God. And he did right. And so God restored the land somewhat and restored the house of God. He was allowed to bring in enough money by the blessing of God to restore the house of God, which, oddly enough, when he was young, he told everybody to do that. Though they didn't do it, they kept living off that money. They kept pulling it in for themselves. And he finally put a stop to it and said, look, you're not getting any more money until the house gets fixed. And so they did. They fixed it. Turns out the guy knows a little bit about economy. But anytime you've got an organization and anytime there's money coming in, you've got to be very careful who has access to that money, because it's very easy to get corrupted by the flow of that money. In my case, it's very easy not to get corrupted by the flow of money because there's very little flow of money. I'm barely scraping by. As long as it's that way, I'm not worried about it. When it starts getting to a point where there's actual cash flow coming in, then I'm going to have to start guarding my hedges, because every penny of that needs to go towards teaching the Word of God or towards feeding me. When Jehu killed all the princes of the family of Ahab, why would he place their heads in a pile to make a point? That's something like what Genghis Khan would do during his conquests while committing genocide. Jehu was used by God even though he had his mistakes correct. I think you've answered your own question. The most pleasure I got was from the death of Jezebel. She was pure evil. Well, you shouldn't get any pleasure out of anybody's death, but I understand where you're coming from. Now, why did Jehu pile up all the heads at the gate? So that everyone would see it and know that there's a new sheriff in town, because all those heads were heads of people who would be ascension to the throne. So what he was doing was posting rather publicly that he's the new king and ain't nobody else going to question that. Nobody. I've killed all those who could be king. I'm the only one there is. The buck stops here. Not saying that it's right, but that's the way men are, especially in those days. It's called boasting. It's called being bravado, having bravado. And his idea of it was to pile up a bunch of heads in the public walkway where everybody comes into the city and can see it. Now, are you saying that Genghis Khan was a bad guy? I don't think he was. I think he was a conqueror. That's what conquerors do. They conquer. That doesn't make him a bad guy. I don't know. I didn't know Genghis Khan, but I'd be willing to bet that he was just doing what the nature of the world was at the time, and he was the best one at it. So, I'd be willing to bet that other people were trying to conquer too. He just beat them to the punch. Same thing in this time. You've got to understand that there's 12 tribes. And out of those 12 tribes, there's 4 or 5 kings of different areas. And then there's all the other kings of the lands that surround that 12 tribes. So there's a lot of play for power going on here. There's going to be constant battle between these factions until one reigns supreme. And then that one will have effectively taken over the world, so to speak. That is continuing even to this day. That's happening right now. That's happening in this country right now. So you just have to understand that though they will cry, peace, 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 there will not be any peace. There never will be. There will always be war. That's just the nature of mankind. We are a warring people. Does that make us bad? Well, kinda. But we have the blessings of God, the grace of God, that we can ask for forgiveness for our sins. And that is a saving grace. And as long as we live our lives in the direction of being saved, we will be all right. The minute that we forsake God and try to do things for ourselves, that's when the problems start. And that's when the world goes bad. And if you'll look outside, you'll notice that that's kind of happened right now. And there's a lot of people who have forsaken God. And that's why we're going down into the toilet right now. And you will also see that when we did not forsake God, this was the greatest country on earth, had the most power of any country on earth. When we put God first. When we stopped doing that, that's when things started going downhill. And they will continue to go downhill until somebody changes the nature of this country back to the way it was. Donald Trump tried to do that, but he had too many enemies and was not able. He was not successful. His heart was in the right place, but his ability fell short. That may not always be the case. Maybe somebody, or maybe even him, might get back in office soon and change things. Maybe he just had to learn how to play the game. I mean, he's never been in politics before, so maybe it took him that term to figure out how this is all done. Maybe he'll run again in 2024 and knock the roof off of the place. Who knows? Leave that up to God. God will put who needs to be in power if the world goes far enough down the tube. This is evidenced all through the Bible. He will let it go for a while. And when he sees that they're not going to straighten up on their own, he will appoint somebody to go in and take over. And that person will be victorious for a while. And then they will eventually fall back to the dark side. And then he'll do it again. And it's been going on since the beginning of time. This is not new. It's been happening forever. So, there you go. There's that. And as evil as Jezebel was, she was still a human being, and she still had a life, and that life was taken. That's a sad thing, no matter who it is. But I get the sentiment. I understand why you feel that way. She was a bad dude. Any other questions or comments? I've had a great time tonight. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and enjoying the read and being part of the whole conversation. Keep doing that. Keep being part of it. Keep being participatory and see where it gets you. Take time and be kind to somebody. It doesn't take any effort to show kindness. So when you see somebody, show a little kindness and see where that takes your life. Watch it change your life. Love is all you need. And if you have that, and if you show that, you will always do well in this world. Thanks. I look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday, where we'll talk about something. It'll be fun. We'll enjoy it. And then we'll make our way on to Sunday, where we'll continue this story. Have a great week. I love you guys with all my heart. I enjoyed tonight. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Have a great night, and thanks for watching.